Okay, let's get this party started.
But yeah.
Hey, Cassie,
Yeah, 2 minutes before we start, please.
say that again.
Can I please have a few minutes before you start, please?
Yes, let me stop the recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, guys, are we on chapters 3 and 4 today? Are we moving on to 5? We're on 5?
We
All
said
right.
5.
That's what I thought we were doing, but I want to be sure. Okay, let me share my screen. And let me get my handy dandy book up.
Yeah, I have a question before we
Yes,
start.
ma'am.
In chapter 5.3, prioritize requirement, how come SME is not a stakeholder?
5.3, prioritize requirements. Let's see who is the stakeholders that are listed. Implementation SME, customer, end user, PM, regulator, and sponsor. We scroll over here to the right. These are the jobs that each of them have. Let's see if they fill what you had expected. Okay. The customer verifies that the prioritized requirements will deliver value from the customer or end user perspective. The customer can also negotiate to have prioritization changed based on relative value. So that's their job. The end user verifies that the prioritized requirements will deliver value from a customer or end user perspective. The implementation SME provides input relating to the technical dependencies and can negotiate to have the prioritization changed based upon the technical constraints. The project manager uses prioritization as input into the project plan and into the allocation of requirements to releases. Regulators can verify the prioritization is consistent with legal and regulatory constraints.
But you don't have the domain. Do we have domain subject matter as a SME?
Yes, we have a domain SME.
5
And
points.
you're right, they're not listed, but maybe it just says yes. So they are involved in it, they just don't have a job.
Okay.
And the last one that I didn't read is sponsors verifies the prioritized requirements will deliver value from an organizational perspective. Some of these are going to be actually questions, who is it that verifies that the requirements will deliver value in this task? It's like, oh, okay, we know that's a sponsor. We just read that, right? I gave you a freebie there. So your domain SME is involved. I don't know why I don't have it over here. It If somebody could check the Babok, see if domain
It's
SME
not
is on
in it's not
screen.
in Babok.
It's not in there?
No,
Okay,
it's
then I'm
not.
going to ask you, have you checked the errata?
Did you put it into Slack?
I
Because
did
last
put it into Slack.
okay, I will
I'm
check.
wondering if that's why I don't have it here, but I do have a yes over there. I'm wondering if that's it. I could be wrong. We can check it later though.
Yes,
So
please.
remember, the errata is the way. Am I sharing my screen? Y'all can see it, right? Okay. On this screen, I can see all of you, which I love. I just want to be sure I'm sharing my screen. So the errata is, Cassie, Amanda says that her Slack has expired, so she needs assistance. Not necessarily right now, but yes. So the errata, one more time, I put it in Slack, and it is where they found errors in the Babok. And so the errors can be anything from we left this word off, which is an important word, or this word needs to be taken off, which you need to know that too. Or it can be something like the spacing isn't consistent in this area, and it's like, I don't care about that. Give me the word changes. So it will have information in the Babok, and then we'll have more information in the techniques of things that need to be changed. Yes, Bob.
Like I pointed out last week, when I got my CBAP, one of the things I did to prepare was create a grid of all the tasks versus all the oh wait, this is never mind, just totally ignore me. Um the just because somebody may be involved in something doesn't necessarily mean they're a stakeholder. So they could be consulted, but they might not be responsible. So that's a whole crazy thing.
I
So the
just
Babok,
checked the errata and the domain should be ISME. So they
it
fixed it.
should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was the thing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. So it's domain SME.
Yeah. It's
Very
a
good.
stakeholder.
So they are a stakeholder, but they don't have a specified role that says what their role is,
Yeah.
I guess. Okay. Um, I don't remember if I went through this with y'all, but I'm going to do it one more time if I did it already because I love you guys. As we talk about chapter 5 is one of those that is kind of easy in some ways. Let's talk about the tasks. There's 5 tasks: trace requirements, maintain, prioritize, assess requirements changes, and approve requirements. And whenever you talk about this being the task, the output is almost easy. Trace requirements is requirements traced and designs traced. Maintain requirements is requirements maintained and designs maintained, etc. So it's pretty easy whenever you're talking about what is the output. It's always going to be that plus the condition. So it shows the condition of the requirement or the condition of the design. I want to talk about maintain requirements. I've seen in my classes lately, and we're in chapter 5 also, it talks about who uses maintained requirements the most. So I want to be sure we all understand what maintained requirements. And if y'all have a clarification about what I'm about to say, please go ahead and speak up. Maintained requirements is to keep the requirement updated from the first time you write it, and then as you make changes, so it continues to be updated as to current state as you make changes, even after you roll out the project, so that the product continues to have current requirements of what it's supposed to do. Let me give you an example. You have a web page for your organization that's got 32 sections in it. And that's part of your project. You added the first 15 sections and you're done with your project and you go on to another project. Those requirements have to reflect what current state is at rollout, right? Well, let's say they added another 3 sections. Somebody's got to do regression testing. And I know you know this, but I want to say it anyway. Regression testing means we made a change. Does everything else that we already had created, is it still working the way we expected it? That's where you use those requirements. When the menu is supposed to work this way, the header is supposed to do this. This is the landing page. When you click this in the footer, it's supposed to do this. The person who's responsible for that application, that project, whatever, they need those requirements to be maintained. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about maintain requirements. There's also maintaining for reuse, which means, let's say I've got 3 web pages I'm creating for the organization, and each one of them has their own landing page. So I create requirements for the first landing page. It's like it's got to have a header, it's got to have a menu, it's got to have a footer, it's got to have a little video that shows on the top half of the splash page. Those are standards, right? And I'm not going to make them so specific where I can't reuse those requirements for my other 2 web pages, because each one has to have a header. You don't make it so specific where you say the header has to say this thing, have this, you make it something that all these things can apply to the next ones as cookie cutters. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, let's get into some test questions. Are y'all excited? Okay, I'm going to ask you to please invest in the conversation of why you think something is correct or why you think something is incorrect, because y'all are at the stage where that is extremely valuable. You're going to learn from each other. Okay. I am still going to do let's wait 10 seconds before we talk about what we're going to remove. I'm still going to do the thing about which task are we in. So just setting expectations. Okay. Geisen. I'm going to pronounce that probably wrong. I'm going to call him Geisen. His name's now Geisen. I made it up. Geisen works in an IT shop in Toronto. He uses requirements that are in the maintained state when developing regression tests and conducting impact analysis for enhancement. What type of stakeholders, Geisen? I'm going to tell you right now. We're talking about maintained requirements. You know that. The BABOK has a different idea about who does regression tests than maybe you do. So if you haven't read this is going to be a little surprising to you. Okay. So is Geisen the domain SME? Is he the operational support? Is he an implementation SME or is he a tester? Let me ask you to pause for 10 seconds while we think about it. Okay, let's eliminate one. Which type of stakeholder is Geisen absolutely not?
Operational support?
Yeah, operational support.
So he's not operational support.
Yeah. And
Or the tester.
And he's not
Why
the
would he?
tester.
Why would he not be a tester? Wouldn't the tester
Yeah.
develop the regression testing?
In the real world, that's what we do, right?
Right.
But that's not what the BABOK says.
Oh, this is
Just
where I
know
always fall
in the
over.
BABOK company, life is a little different.
Okay.
So what do you think the correct answer is?
so if it's not tested, either domain implementation.
It's one of them. Which
I'm
one do you want to
saying
guess?
C.
Yeah, implementation,
I'm
not the
thinking
domain.
implementation.
Yeah. No?
I'm going to go A because if it's about regression testing, then it's about the whole domain, making
I
sure
was
that
actually
all of
also
the
going to go with
end-to-end
A.
processes are still working.
I think it's C.
I think
Okay.
it's C. And the reason
Yeah.
why we could be wrong, but in a project you can have more than one domain SME.
Absolutely.
Um,
But who does the
the
BABOK says
implementation for
does
the
the regression tests?
I don't
Implementation.
know. Who does the domain SME do the
I've got more votes for C. Let's
Wow.
test it.
I think it's
Go on.
actually C.
Per the BABOK, the implementation SME utilizes maintained requirements when developing regression testing and conducting impact analysis for an enhancement. So one thing that I really like about this one is when he talks about impact analysis, that makes me
Yeah.
think it's probably more the implementation because that's the change, right? Yes,
Mhm.
Bob.
Other thing is that programmers tend to write all the automated tests, and that's what regression tests tend to be. So when you're doing test-driven development, you say, okay, test for this, and then you run it, and the test is supposed to fail. And then you develop the code and then the test is supposed to pass. But the person who is responsible for writing the code writes those tests. And usually it's the automated stuff that checks to see, and there could be hundreds of these, if not more. That you didn't break anything else when you put in new stuff. So that's what's going on with this question. It is tricky if you don't know that.
It's absolutely tricky. So the reason domain SME is not the answer is because they utilize maintained requirements to ensure they accurately reflect stated needs, but that's not what the question was asking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to this one. The implementation SME is responsible for developing regression tests and conducting impact analysis for enhancements. That's their job in this company called the Babok Company. Let's go on to question 2. Maritza is a business analyst on a data strategy effort. Artifacts, which are deliverables, like things that you produce, a document. Artifacts such as business models and business maps are created, reviewed, and approved individually without having to wait for the entire package. Which approach is being employed by this effort? So when we're talking about approach, we know that we're probably talking about plan-driven or change-driven, which is waterfall or agile. And it says this looks kind of like iterations to me.
Yeah,
So
I
is
agree.
it the analytical approach, the adaptive approach, the predictive approach, or the strategic approach? Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, what can we eliminate? Which one is it not?
Analytical.
Predictive.
Strategic analytical.
Okay, so it's A and C we're canceling out, right?
Yes.
And we're taking out analytical because that's not one of our approaches, right?
Right.
And predictive is waterfall, which is you don't do things in small bites, you do things in big bites, right?
Yeah.
So is it B or D?
B.
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 Adaptive.
I'm hearing B's
B.
and D's.
B.
Okay. Adaptive projects typically approve requirements when construction of the solution is ready to begin.
In reality, is there any strategic approach in Babok? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. Just it's good to know that there is
It
no
does talk about
strategic.
being strategic,
Yeah.
approaching projects strategically, but there's not a strategic
But there is
approach.
exactly. Okay.
Which of the following criteria are the basis for prioritization of requirements? So prioritization for requirements, that's one of our tasks, right? It's called prioritize requirements. So for that one, which of the following criteria? So when you look at prioritize requirements, you got 3 elements of it. One is basis for prioritization, and then there's this whole list of things. This is an example of a few of those things, not exhaustive list. So is risk one of those?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then we can eliminate this one. Is benefit or baseline? Which one is it?
Benefit.
Benefit.
Okay, so we can eliminate this one. Is it cost or constraint?
Cost.
Cost.
Okay, so we know our answer. These are the criteria for basis for prioritization. It also, just to show you the whole list, is benefit, penalty, cost, risk, dependency, time sensitivity, stability, regulatory or policy compliance. You need to know what each of those things mean and think about how you would apply that thing to prioritization. A business analyst must manage and maintain requirements and design information throughout the requirements lifecycle. When does requirement lifecycle begin and end? Before we get to the question of that, what task are they doing here?
Requirement lifecycle management.
Requirement lifecycle
Oh,
management.
it's task, not the knowledge area. I'm sorry, I was saying the knowledge
It's
area.
okay. It's okay. That's the knowledge area. Which task in that knowledge area is this?
Isn't it
It's
maintain and when you say manage, isn't it also trace?
I think it's trace. Yeah.
Stability? I think
Trace
it's more.
requirements.
So this is either trace requirements or maintain requirements. It could be across both of those.
Yeah.
When does the requirements lifecycle begin and end? According to the Babok, it begins when the representation of the business need and ends when the solution is retired. It begins with the project iteration and ends with the project is closed out. It begins with the collection of solution requirements and ends with the solution is retired. It begins with the business need and ends when the requirements have been implemented. Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, which one is absolutely wrong?
D as in David.
B is definitely wrong.
Okay. Why do we dislike D? What's wrong with it?
Because it doesn't end when it's implemented, it ends when the whole solution is done.
You're right. You're right. So not at this point, not when our project is finished. It's whenever the whole thing is retired, like the mainframe is dismantled or the website is taken down. So what do we think the correct answer is and why?
It's A.
A.
I would say A.
Yeah.
Why do you like
Definitely.
A?
Yeah, A.
Because the Babok says that it begins with the representation of the business need. It ends
Yeah.
when the solution is retired.
Like you read it or something. The requirement life cycle begins with the representation of the business need at the very beginning and continues through the development of a solution and ends with when a solution and the requirements that represent it are retired. That's the only time they're retired. They're going to be maintained until that point. Which of the following is not considered a guideline and tool for assessing requirements changes? So we know what our task is. We know that there's a finite number of guidelines and tools for this task. We want to know that there's 3 of these that are guidelines and tools and 1 that is not. So for assessing requirements changes, change strategy, requirements architecture, change control, or domain knowledge. Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, which one? Let's start at the top. Is change strategy a guideline and tool?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about requirements architecture? Is that a guideline and tool?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. How about change control? Is that a guideline and tool?
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
We think that's not the answer. How about domain knowledge? Is that a guideline and tool?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to encourage you every time you read these, don't stop at the second one because you think that's the answer. Go ahead and read the rest of them just to be sure. So, Babok 5.4.5, change control is not included in the listing for guidelines and tools for assessing change. The change control process is developed during the plan for business analysis governance task. Remember way back then, chapter 3, whenever we said who's going to be able to make the decisions about changes. That's whenever you develop that. Brad is a business analyst in his small business unit. I want to point out to you, this is noise. That's not going to help us with the question. But you got to read it, right? The organization is undergoing restructuring and introduces changes to the business analysis approach. As part of the structural changes, Brad has been asked to assess each proposed change to the business analysis approach, is what we're talking here. In this activity, which of the following is least likely to be a consideration? So 3 of these are going to be a consideration. 1 of these is not. Each proposed change impacts the time to deliver or the resources required to deliver the value. Each proposed change affects value delivered to the business or stakeholder groups. Each proposed change aligns with the overall strategy. Each proposed change aligns with the business case. Let's give it a 10 count and come back and we're going to go through them one at a time. Okay. Impacts time to deliver or the resources required to deliver value. Is this a consideration?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Affects value delivered to the business or stakeholder groups.
Yes.
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 Aligns with the overall strategy.
Yes.
Yes.
Aligns with the business case.
No.
Probably
So
not.
we think
Nope.
that one is the not. Okay. This is a fabricated answer and is therefore the correct one for this question. So in my little brain, I'm thinking, well, of course we want it to align with the business case because that's scope, right? That's not what
Yep.
this question is asking. What type of relationship between requirements describes when when it only makes sense to implement a particular requirement if a related requirement is also implemented. Remember that list I said you need to understand the reason? This
Yeah.
is in it. So it only makes sense to implement a requirement if a related requirement is also implemented. For instance, an example of this would be on this user interface, adding a check for a phone number to see the phone number format is valid only makes sense if you're going to add the space for the phone number, right? That one doesn't make sense without that. So is the name of that effort, validate, satisfy, or necessity? Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, what do we think is not the right answer?
Necessity.
Tell me what necessity means.
You should.
You should, okay? And effort? What does that one mean?
Effort.
How difficult something is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the
Depends on
correct
each
answer?
other. Satisfy.
Necessity.
I think it's D. Yeah.
You like D for the correct answer? Okay, I see some heads nodding.
Yeah.
Let's try it out. The relationship exists only when it makes sense to implement a particular requirement if a related requirement is also implemented. Let's go ahead and look at these. Satisfy describes a relationship between an implementation element and the requirement it's satisfying. This thing meets this requirement. It's a yes or no. Validate. Validate is the relationship between a requirement and the test case or similar element that can determine whether a solution fulfills the requirement. So I want you to realize satisfy is looking back toward the requirement. Validate is looking forward toward the design. And then effort. An effort relationship is one in which a requirement is easier to implement if a related requirement is also implemented. Can somebody give me an example of this?
So
Let's say
maybe like
Facebook.
validation, if you have somebody that has to enter a password and then you need them to do like MFA, it would be just easier to implement like that additional level of security once someone has entered a password.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you
It
wanted
doesn't
to
even
upgrade
make sense,
your
right?
website and have it be more secure, you would start implementing not just the password, but also, which has happened to me numerous times with like different accounts. Are like, oh, now we're going to require you to do MFA, scan this QR code, and I would think it's easier to implement that sort of security measure only once you're already requiring someone to authenticate themselves.
In IT, that is a great example. Let me give you a non-IT example. Let's say that we run a fruit stand and I'm selling cherries by the pound. No, I'm selling them by the quart. Let's do cherries by the quart. It would be easier to sell cherries by the quart if I gave people quart-sized containers to put the cherries in, right? You gotta give them something to help them get to the final destination. That might have been a confusing example, but it made sense to me whenever I thought of it.
That makes sense.
To effectively manage requirements throughout all phases of a change initiative, the business analyst will complete which of these tasks? So we're going to manage requirements. So we know we're in requirements management task, right? And we know that that happens through all changes. So we're going to complete one of these lists of tasks. So let me read them to you. This one starts with define the business need. These all start with trace requirements. Is it define the business need or trace requirements?
Trace
These
requirement.
requirements.
Okay, so we can eliminate that one. Maintaining requirements for reuse is in all three. Prioritize requirements is in these two. This one says define requirements architecture. Which one is it?
Prioritize
Prioritize
requirements.
requirements.
Prioritize, yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to eliminate this one. Assess risks or assess requirements changes.
Assess
That's
requirement changes.
And then approve requirements. So this is the one that we've come down to. The requirements lifecycle management knowledge area includes these tasks: trace requirements, maintain requirements, including reuse, prioritize requirements, assess requirements changes, and approve requirements. Y'all will have this so memorized later. I mean, right now you're like, I can't ever, you just will do it. It just works. Susan is in the process of evaluating implications of her proposed changes to requirements and designs. She consults with knowledgeable stakeholders to fully understand the proposed change in relationship to the business. Which guideline is Susan observing? So, which task is she in?
Assess requirement change.
Assess requirements change. That's the one she's in. And so, in that task, there's a finite number of guidelines and tools. So is she using solution scope, impact analysis, requirements architecture, or domain knowledge? Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, which one is she not using? Let's start with that. Is it domain knowledge?
Not like
No. Solution scope? To fully understand the proposed change in relationship to the business. Maybe, maybe not. How about impact analysis?
I think it's B.
Yeah.
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 Okay, let's test it.
Ah,
Oh, it's domain knowledge? Oh my goodness.
It is. So domain knowledge of and expertise in the business domain is needed to assess proposed requirements changes. So let's say I am I'm an end user of a system. I'm a customer service rep and I have to put information into these fields and I do it all day long. And I know that if I put too many characters into this particular field, it locks up the system. And they say, oh no, we're just going to let you put more characters in that. And you're like, no, I know my domain, ask me before you make changes to don't move my cheese. Okay. This is my thing. Don't mess it up. So you have to ask those that have domain knowledge, what impact would it make if we made this change, not only to your system, but to the requirements about your system? The requirement said you can only put in 10 characters for a phone number, but now we want you to put in the brackets and stuff. And it's like, don't do that to me. Does that make sense? I want to talk a minute about requirements architecture. Requirements architecture in this chapter, whenever I first started reading it, whenever I first started studying it, I thought requirements architecture, that's my requirements about the architecture. That's not what it means. Okay, that's not what it means. This is not business architecture. This is not what the architect for the technology people, it's not what they do it either. This is how you structure your requirements. Do you identify where who gave you that requirement? What is the impacts of that requirements? What's the dependencies of that requirement? Which group of requirements does this in? Let's say you're working on a web page, and so this requirement is for the splash page. And so all of the requirements on the splash page are in the bucket splash page. And then you write a sub bucket that says splash page header, splash page video, splash page footer. So they're all in those. And so that's how you organize it. That's the architecture of your requirements. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, which of the following would dictate to a business analyst which stakeholders to involve in reviewing and approving requirements? So which stakeholders do this thing? Something dictates this information to us. So when we're talking about reviewing and approving requirements, which task are we in?
Approving requirements.
Approving requirements. Brilliant. You get a brownie point. Okay, in approving requirements, it's whoever the sponsor has designated will sign off. a stakeholder list with roles and responsibilities, sponsor, project manager, tester, business analyst, and business architect are all needed. Sponsor, project manager, and quality assurance are all needed. Let's come back and find out who we don't need first. 10 seconds. Okay. Which one do we not need, guys?
D.
Only
Why do
D,
you want to
only
take out
C.
C? Was it C or D? Maybe you said D.
D.
D. Delta.
Okay. So Delta, we're going to
Yeah.
take this one out. Why are we taking this one out?
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance is not a
Oh,
prescribed stakeholder, surely.
yeah.
That's a good logic. Okay, so we're taking that one out. Which one do we think is the correct answer?
So
I think it's A,
Okay.
but
I say B.
Sponsor.
I say
Okay.
B.
Amanda, why do you like A?
because and this is where I get confused because my head's going to governance.
Okay. I like that your head's going to governance.
But sponsor is not the one who designate who will sign off.
So who likes B?
Me.
Why do you like B?
I like B because I always use a stakeholder list.
That's a good reason. Does anybody know what the BABOK says
the
about it?
sponsor, in my experience, the sponsor is just kind of like they don't really. They just the project is for that person's group, and they're just kind of there. I mean, they have to sign off, but really, everyone else, the SMEs, the analysts, the everybody else is pretty much, they know more than the sponsor. I mean, even though the sponsor does have to sign off, but
So in the real world, in your world, sponsors are figureheads that don't have a lot of knowledge, right?
right. It's just
Okay.
they're paying for it. That's what it is.
They're paying for it. So they, you got to talk to them every once in a while. Okay. So who likes the stakeholder list with roles and responsibilities and why?
The question is reviewing and approving.
And approve, yeah.
Not only we have to review,
So,
and also business analyst can also sometimes approve.
Okay.
It's written. So that's why, like for me, I would choose C.
Let's test B. The stakeholder
Wow.
list and roles and responsibilities will provide information on who will approve requirements. But remember, it was back in governance that we identified it and put it in this document. So going back to governance makes perfect sense, but this is the document that gives us the information now.
And I
Yes,
also
ma'am.
just realized that I misread the question, which is also a big problem, because the question is asking which artifact will you go to, or which source of truth do you go to find out which stakeholders have to review and approve the requirements. So the question is, in my mind, misleading because I misread it. But what it's
I
asking you is,
understand. If it said who will dictate this, I can
right,
understand you going to sponsor, but it says which
yep,
of the following will dictate, which infers it's not a who, it's a what.
to what?
Right.
Yeah, the question
That's
is written very, very nebulously.
yeah. That's one reason I read everything for y'all so you can hear it and see it. You'll get it though, I promise. Which of the following statements is true regarding tasks a business analyst may perform while evaluating the necessity for change within an enterprise? So, which task are we talking about when we say evaluating the necessity for change within an enterprise? What task is that?
Assess requirement change, something.
Sounds like a
Assess
strategy.
requirements
Change.
change. Yeah.
Something like this.
Okay. And then, which of the following statements is true? The business analyst would perform tasks in order to in the order prescribed by the BABOK in order for the organization to realize value. The business analyst needs sponsor approval for and stakeholder collaboration on the tasks they deem necessary for various initiatives. Tasks a business analyst perform may vary in form, order, or importance for various initiatives. Tasks a business analyst performs should be completed in an orderly and formal manner. I see grimaces on several of your faces, so you do not agree with some of these. I understand. Let's give it 10 seconds. Okay, what do we think about A, guys?
No, kill it.
Yeah,
it?
it's wrong. Yeah.
Why is it wrong? What's wrong with it?
I
Because
think
it's
I think
A,
it's
B,
a
and
The
right
order can
answer.
change.
it's not an instruction manual, it's a framework.
Yeah.
Hey, how about B? What do we think of this? Do we need the sponsor for approval and stakeholder collaboration on the tasks that they deem necessary for various initiatives?
No.
I think A, B, and D all sound more strict, and C is the only one that sounds more flexible. So that's
So you think
Right.
C is the correct answer?
kind of.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's test C. BABOK 1.1. Tasks may vary in form, order, or importance for individual business analysts or for various initiatives. I love it that the BABOK says you do what's right for your team, for your project, and for that day. You know, your team's going to be evolving constantly, and people have bad days and good days and strengths and weaknesses. You do what's right for them. And BABOK never says you've got to do it in a certain order. It does say there's inputs, you know, that you need this thing to be able to do this job, but it doesn't say you've got to do this job at, you know, the third day of the project.
I learned from Thea that the BABOK is crazy open-ended. And I see the logic of that. So
Crazy open-ended. That's the way we roll, man. Who are the key stakeholders that contribute to the maintenance of requirements? So maintenance of requirements is maintain requirements, right? Is it the domain SME, implementation SME, operational support regulator tester? Usability SME, developers, designers, user experience SME. Domain SME, documentation SME, regulator, or supervisors, directors, computer operators, and designers. Let's come back in 10 and eliminate some of these guys. Okay, let's start at the bottom. What do you think of this one?
You
No.
can eliminate it.
No.
No.
Eliminate.
What's wrong with it? Don't you're just hating on these people.
They're not
They're not
BABOK terms.
formal. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
there's a
formal
whole lot of
stakeholder
made
terms.
up stuff.
I just don't like this one either. So
Computer
how about this
operators
one?
is the best.
I love my computer operator.
Yeah, I love my computer operators.
Okay, how about this one? Domain SME,
No.
documentation SME, and regulator.
There is
What's wrong with that one?
I haven't heard of
There
it.
is no documentation.
Right.
There's no
I don't
stakeholder.
remember that one in the
documentation.
BABOK. He might
Definitely
be
the
the
odd one in the book.
domain
On the
SME,
list.
right?
Yeah.
He's the SME over the domain of documentation, but we don't call him a documentation SME, we call him a domain SME.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, how about the usability SME,
No.
developers, designers, user experience SME? You like that one?
No.
No. No.
No?
Head scratchers,
They
head
are not
scratchers.
terms.
Well, I guess we're going to have to go with A.
Yeah.
These are key stakeholders listed in the BABOK for maintain requirements. Let's talk about what they do. The domain SME, why is it important to them to maintain requirements?
Because
ensure
they're
the
the experts in their particular
Exactly.
domain. So yeah,
And so if something in their domain changes,
they need to know
have
about
their
it.
requirements updated,
Yeah.
right?
Make sure it's updated. Yep.
The implementation SME is responsible for the regression tests and ongoing maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Operational support They need the requirements maintained. Why?
Yes.
For
It's
resolutions,
operations.
troubleshooting,
Yeah.
support.
Yes, to resolve problems. They need to know what's going on. Have a repository to look into it and go, oh, that's how it's supposed to act. And this user just didn't know how it was supposed to act. So they're calling the help desk and going, it doesn't work right. You know, then we tell it turn it off and on and giggle. How about regulators? Why do they want requirements maintained?
They want to make
Are
sure
the
that it matches the
trades,
regulations.
yeah.
It's in alignment with regulations, yeah.
Regulators can also audit you, and they want to know
Yeah.
what is current state. You prove to us that you're doing what you had said that you're going to do. And then why do testers need to have requirements maintained?
So they know how to test it correctly.
Yeah.
I don't know what to test, right?
Yeah.
All right. You guys are getting it. Which of the following stakeholders typically involved in reviewing and approving requirements? So we're in the approve requirements task. Is it, I see domain SME on all of them. So implementation SME, is that one in there?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay.
Tester.
How about the customer?
Probably
No?
so.
Okay. End user? Do they review and approve requirements?
No. No.
Maybe not. Okay. How about sponsor and project manager?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's test it.
Project manager doesn't
yeah.
have requirement.
So the explanation says this is picky, but your real exam may be picky as well. The BABOK mentions the project manager's review solution scope and any changes to it, but there's no mention of any other involvement by the PM in reviewing and approving requirements, which is what the question is asking. The domain SME, the customer, and the sponsor are responsible for reviewing and approving requirements in the approve requirements task. They're the ones.
Customer is the general term. They could be internal or external, and an end user could be a form of customer. So customer is more general.
The BABOK generally uses, I'm using general too much. Generally, the BABOK uses end user to be the person that sits inside of your company and uses your computers. They're internal. And they use customer as the person who receives goods on the outside of your company. So that's external. But there is a little bit of gray in there. Generally, if you go with end users are internal and customers are external, you'll probably be okay. What is the purpose of assessing requirements changes? So assessing requirements changes is our task. There's only one purpose, right? Is it to evaluate the implication of proposed changes to the requirements and designs? To measure requirements metrics? To know how many requirements have been documented? Or to analyze root cause of a problem? Let's give it 10 seconds. Okay, what do we want to eliminate, guys?
To measure requirement matrix.
Yeah.
We can eliminate that
Makes
one.
no sense.
Yeah.
Also D.
To know.
Eliminate
And yeah.
N, C, and A is the answer. I see that in chat. So this is the answer. The purpose of assessing requirements changes is to evaluate the implication of proposed changes to requirements and designs. So put yourself in the position of, I've got this project, we're halfway through. Somebody comes and says, you've got to change this one requirement. It's going to blow our system up. And so your job at that point is to determine, is it true it's going to blow their system up? And what is the implication to all the rest of the requirements in this project? Will we be able to meet our goal of the project? Is it going to be within scope or out of scope? You've got all these evaluations you've got to do, but that's what you're trying to do is evaluate the implication. What's going to happen if I make this change? During assess requirements changes task, impact analysis is performed to assess or evaluate the effect of the change. Depending on the impact analysis and resolution, various stakeholders may be authorized to do the following to the proposed change. Which one is not one of them? So various stakeholders, it doesn't tell us which stakeholders it is, but we do know what task we're in. We're in the assess requirements changes task. We know that there's a finite number of stakeholders in that one. They are authorized to do the following to the proposed change. They deny it, they approve it, they alter it, or they defer it. Let's come back in 10 seconds. Okay, which one should we eliminate, guys?
C.
C.
We don't like the alter the proposed change?
I say
I don't.
eliminate
It's not
C.
in the list, right? It's just
Yeah.
not in the list. So what is the correct answer?
Oh, it's on the list.
B.
Yeah.
Which is not one of them, it's C.
In the
What
assess
is not? I'm
requirement,
sorry.
yeah,
You're
What
right.
is not?
What is
Amanda's
not
fine. I
one of
told
them?
you the answer. What is wrong with you, woman? So you can deny it, you can approve it, you can defer it. You cannot alter it. Thank you,
Correct.
Amanda. Halfway around the world as she puts me on the right page. I'm so glad. The BABOK does not state that altering the proposed change is an option. So deny, approve, or defer. That sounds very official, doesn't it? It's like you're important if you can defer. We'll wait until the next, contract comes through and then we'll make that decision. Which of the following items should a BA have defined in order to prioritize requirements or assess changes to requirements? So this is one task. This is one task. That means that the BA has to have defined something to do either one of those tasks. So it probably means that it's going to be an input into both of those tasks. Is it the BA should have defined requirements, proposed change, potential value, or change strategy? Let's come back in 10. Okay, what does the BA have to define first?
The requirements?
yeah, it's an input.
Yeah, requirements.
Priority. Yeah.
You
Seems too easy.
cannot prioritize something that you haven't defined. You can't assess changes to something you haven't defined. Requirements, along with designs, are needed inputs into all the tasks into this knowledge area. Good job, guys.
Why is C not the right answer?
Potential
that
value is
comes
not one of the
later.
inputs into this knowledge area.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about being a business analyst is it's my job to ask questions, even if I know the answer and I understand it, but other people in the room may not. If I think that there is any uncertainty that they don't have the same understanding as each other. So it's my job to say, just to level set, let me ask this question. I love it that Bob may say things sometimes just so that we have that understanding. Thank you, Bob. You're a good BA. Requirements that represent an ongoing need must be maintained. So this is the task we're in to ensure that they remain valid over time. Different stakeholders reference and use these requirements. Which of the following represent why testers would require maintained requirements? Testers use maintained requirements to aid in test plan and test case creation. Testers reference maintained requirements on a regular basis to ensure they are accurately reflecting stated needs. Testers are likely to reference maintained requirements to confirm the current state. Testers utilize maintained requirements when developing regression tests and conducting impact analysis for enhancement. Let's give it 10. Okay, which one should we eliminate, guys?
D.
D.
I have a question here because
Yes, Amanda.
in a previous question, we established that according to the BABOK, testers do not develop test plans. I'm like, oh,
that is what the previous question told us.
Yeah,
according to the BABOK, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Amanda, do you feel like we can eliminate this one?
Well, we have to. Although in a real world, this would absolutely apply. But yeah,
we're not worried about the real world at the moment. This is our BABOK company that we live in.
It's messing with my head.
I understand that. I understand that. So, what do we think is the right answer? Why do testers need maintained requirements?
A.
Yeah.
I think it's A.
I think it's C. Oh, you
Oh.
like
I think it's A or C.
Yeah, I like C
That,
too.
that's
Yeah,
reason.
you need maintain. Well,
Yeah.
you need requirements for test plan creation and test
Yeah,
creation. You just
cases.
need requirements, but maintain
That's true.
requirements help with validating current state or confirming current state.
So we like A and C. Does anyone want to argue one or the other? Okay, let's test.
C.
Oh,
This
it's A.
statement represents operational support.
Right.
Confirm current state is operational support. You know, remember the guys that, you call them on the help desk and they say, let me look into that. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
acting that way. They need to know. Testers use maintain requirements to aid in test plan and test case creation. Their primary responsibility is to develop a testing plan and create test cases. Maintained requirements provide solid reference to these endeavors. Good job.
I guess I've gotten I've gotten requirements, not necessarily maintained, but requirements nonetheless.
Let me mention this. I gave a talk to Purdue University the other day on AI and why BAs are needed for AI development. They have something called drift in AI, which is exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about maintained requirements. Drift is you create an agent and say the agent is saying nobody under the age of 21 can get alcohol. And then you put that agent into practice, and then your state changes the law so people 18 can get alcohol. Well, now your agent is not representing reality because reality has changed. That's what they call drift. So to maintain that, you would have to update your agent to the current reality. This is maintaining requirements. That's maintaining an AI agent, which you have to maintain the requirements to maintain the agent, right? We want to make this change. It's got to be a requirement. Nate is a senior business analyst for the NRO company. He is working with Rod on completing the requirements prioritization of all the identified requirements. Why would Rod and Nate complete requirements prioritization? So this is a real question. It doesn't say what role that they have, but apparently these two people need to work together. Nate is a senior BA, so Rod would be probably what role? What role would Rod be if Nate's a senior BA?
Junior BA.
Project manager.
Prioritization of requirements.
Domain SME?
Implementation.
An SME. I don't know which one.
Okay. I'm checking one thing real quick.
Could be
Okay.
almost
So-
anyone.
Okay. To determine which requirements carry the most risk, to determine who created what requirement based on their position in the organization. Oh yeah, the VP's requirements have got to go in. To determine which requirements could be changed, to determine which requirements should be completed first. Which of these is the reason to complete requirements prioritization? Let's give it 10. Okay, which one is not true?
The
B.
B and C
B can be eliminated.
Yeah, B.
and
Yeah.
C.
Okay. And I heard C.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's talking about change, not prioritization, right?
yeah.
Right.
So we have A and D. What do we think is the correct answer?
D.
D.
Yes.
I would say it's D.
Yeah.
This is justification for completing the prioritized task. So in prioritization, there are basically 3 steps. The the PO, the product owner of that project, says, these are the things that I feel are most important. They're going to bring the most value. These are the ones I want you to do first. You take those things, that list, and then you move it over into the developer's hands. And the developer says, I can do this thing. It's going to take this much time. It can't come before this one thing, and it's going to cost you $50,000. And then they get finished making their evaluation of each of those steps, and it goes back into the PO's hands, and they say, oh, that thing that I said was number 1, it's not worth $50,000 to me. Let's move that down. So they reprioritize. So there's 3 reprioritization phases. Now that's general. Every single time you get a new requirement, you get new information, you get maybe a new stakeholder. You got to check your prioritization on all your requirements because it could be impacted, right? If somebody says, hey, we have a new contract with the vendor that we're going to use, and they're going to charge us this much money. Suddenly the PO needs to look at it and go, okay, many of those things are going to impact my requirements, and do I need to reevaluate my requirements?
That's why
Yes.
grooming is continuous, A, and B, that question should have been an absolute slam dunk, and
Yep.
I'm sure it was for most of you.
Sanjay just met with one of his stakeholders who wants to add 2 new requirements to a solution after it's been signed off the previous week. In addition, the new requirements did not match the overall scope of the solution. However, Sanjay is convinced that developers could easily handle the 2 new requirements, so he passed them on to the development team. What should have Sanjay done? So what did he just do whenever he passed on these 2 new requirements that are outside of the scope and have not been signed off? What did he just do?
You
Change the
bypass.
Signed
scope.
them off.
Change scope.
Yeah.
He changed the scope, right?
Mhm.
What should he have done according to the BABOK? Put 2 new requirements into a future phase for delivery. Get approval to change the scope of the solution from whomever has the authority to approve changes and add the new requirement. He should have done nothing different. Since the developers could easily handle the new requirements, this approach was okay. He should have updated the business requirement document and asked for sign-off again. Once sign-off is given, the new requirements can be handed off to development. Let's give it 10 seconds. Okay, which one should he not have done?
C.
See.
A.
So what he did was not what the BABOK says to do. And
A.
A.
B,
Mhm.
get approval from whomever has the authority and add them? You want to cancel that one out?
From whomever to
No,
approve
I would
changes.
cancel the A.
You're saying A, so basically eliminate A, C,
Yeah.
and B.
Eliminate A. Okay. So what do we think is the correct answer?
B.
B.
As in
B.
boy.
I think
Okay.
it's B.
That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any new requirements must be resolved by either officially amending the scope, formally, and changing all documentation or removing the requirements to maintain the current scope. This is done through the assess requirements change and approve requirements tasks, both of those together, within this knowledge area.
Changing the scope is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And it's intentionally, change management is intentionally made to be difficult so people won't do this. They don't want you to it's like, and get involved at the beginning of the project and help us figure it out. Don't throw stuff in the middle. It's like, no, we've already passed through that. Get involved now. And so the general option is we put it in a future iteration, that'll go in phase 2. Or we say, okay, we got to take something out because we don't want. Let me tell you about the iron triangle. Have y'all ever heard about the iron triangle? Yeah, Ashley knows about it. She's done project management work. Bob loves it. Okay, so in project management, for decades, there's this thing called the iron triangle. And let's see, one side of the triangle is cost, one side of the triangle is time, and one side of the triangle is effort. Do I have that right, Ashley?
Either quality or features, and sorry.
Okay. So the idea is if you want to add more to my project, one or two of those things will probably change. So it's going to impact, they're all connected. It's going to impact, it's going to cost more money, it's going to take more time, something's going to change. It's not the same as it was. And it's really normal for people to say, hey, developer, while you're under the hood, would you go ahead and just do this thing? It'll be easy for you. Hallway conversations are the biggest place that scope changes. So, as you begin your project and as you define your governance, you explain to people, we don't have informal changes. Everything has to be documented clearly, and we have to know where every requirement comes from. We don't just make changes because we want to. Kind of makes you sound like the mean old school marm, and sometimes you got to be that way.
Yeah.
Amanda just nailed it, and there's a coda to that, and that is that if you want it super fast, super cheap, or super good, pick one. But mostly the way she said it, you
can get one of
have
them,
it
but the
fast,
others are going to,
good.
Yeah.
it can be super cheap, but it's not going to be fast or something,
Or good.
Or yeah, good. Okay, you have met with the key stakeholder review requirements that are specific to the functionality her team will frequently use. She refuses to approve and sign off on the requirements because she doesn't want to be held to only these requirements if additional needs are discovered. She also states that we need to resolve these issues before the project can begin, or the project will not succeed. You will need to put a task in the business analysis plan to account for resolving them. What is your best response other than getting up and walking out of the room? You can't do that. So she's talking about changes, right? No, she's talking about approval, right?
Yeah.
This is in the approved requirements. So your best response is baseline the requirements without sign off, review the change management process, and provide assurance that any unforeseen requirements will be fairly considered in the change control process. Escalate to the project manager to get approval, or escalate to the project sponsor to get approval. Let's give it a 10 count. Okay, which one do we want to eliminate?
De-escalate.
A.
So we're not going to baseline without sign off. We don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think is the right answer?
B.
B.
I got lots of B's there. The
Yeah.
business analyst is responsible for managing the stakeholder relationship regarding requirements and as part of a professional is obligated to advise the stakeholder on best practices and project related processes. Business analysts are responsible for ensuring that the stakeholders with approval authority understand and accept the requirements. That's a really important line, guys. We want to be sure that those stakeholders with approval authority understand and accept the requirements. Have y'all ever had so many requirements that the people with approval authority is like, I don't have time to read all that? You ever done that?
Mm.
You got to get creative. Hey, let's go out to lunch, and I'll just tell you the stuff you got to know. But you got to be sure that they understand because they can't approve stuff they don't understand. They shouldn't approve stuff that they don't understand. When assessing requirements changes, which of the following roles should the business analyst consult with to determine the impact of the change on stakeholder work activities? Assessing requirements changes, we know what task we're in. We know which role that we work with to determine the impact of the change on stakeholder work activities. Is that the end user, the sponsor, the project manager, or operational support? Let's give it 10. Okay, which one is it not?
Sponsor.
Sponsor.
It's not the sponsor.
And not the
And it's
project
not the
manager.
PM either.
Not the project manager.
No.
I
End
think
user.
I think it's the end user.
Yeah.
Okay, why do you like end user more than operational support?
Because they're the ones who actually would be doing the work.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're correct. The end user uses the solution or the component of the solution and can provide information about what the impact of the change is on their activities. I call them boots on the ground. Those are the boots on the ground guys. They know what's going on. You're the business analyst on an initiative. You have completed requirement solicitation and documentation and are in the process of reviewing the requirements in order to obtain sign off. So you're in the
Approve.
I just lost it. You were in the approve requirements task, right?
Yeah.
John, one of the approving stakeholders, just joined the company and requests a way to accurately assess alignment and completeness of the requirement. So that's his goal. Which of the following items would you provide to John? So it's an item where you have to give him that can provide this information. Would that be the conflict and consensus management document, requirements management tool and repository, the legal and regulatory information, or the solution scope? Let's give it 10. Okay, what do you think of solution scope? Is that the answer? Will
I
that
thought it
tell
was.
him the alignment and completeness of the requirements?
Could be.
Yeah.
I think it is. It's either D or C.
Okay, you like D and C. Does
Yeah.
anybody like A or B?
No.
I don't like
Okay.
A. Yeah. No.
Alignment. Well,
I
wait a
don't
second.
know
It's
that
A.
that's in the BABOK.
No.
Okay, what do we not like about B?
It's the tools like where to save, like saving, and yeah,
Right.
it has
The
nothing to
SharePoint.
do.
Okay, how is legal and regulatory information going to help him accurately assess alignment and completeness of the requirements? So we can eliminate that one.
Yeah,
It's
solution
D. It has to be
scope.
D.
There you go, scope.
Yeah, I
Because
think
it looks
it's
at the big
D.
picture,
We
but does it include the requirements?
Well,
Because
wouldn't the solution scope, the requirements have to meet the solution, right?
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Let's check D.
Mhm.
solution.
Having a solution scope to reference when approving requirements will assist in the accurate assessment of alignment and completeness. We want our requirements to align with the solution scope.
Yeah,
We're building a playground that's 40 by 40 on this piece of land. That's our scope. The requirements are, is it on this piece of land? Is it 40 by 40? Is it a playground?
So can you select B?
I
Why would
can.
it not be? Because B is really just the requirements, but doesn't compare it to the solution scope?
It records approvals and will not help John assess alignment and completeness in requirements. The solution scope will do this, however. Now, in the real world, I identify how my requirement lines up with my goal. You know, it's like you wanted to do this. This is part of that module of requirements that will align with it. But what they're saying is that to assess alignment, completeness of requirements, we have the solution scope as our master. Everything else is just measured against that.
That was actually kind of annoying. There was because you can't compare requirements against the scope unless you have the requirements. So you do need B. I mean, D is kind of the final authority, okay, but it's a little annoying, especially because we already had a question where you need the requirements because you need the requirements. And they already asked a question like that this evening that we've seen. So this one is correct, but it's annoying to me.
Gotcha. Thank you. Which of the following is not a consideration in the prioritized requirements task? So we know what task we're in.
Yeah.
Basis for prioritization, challenges of prioritization, benefits of prioritization, or continual prioritization. Let's give it 10. Okay, I forgot to keep looking at it. I don't know if it's been 10. We're just going to go now. What do y'all think about basis of prioritization? Is that a consideration?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How about challenges of prioritization?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Benefits of prioritization?
Yes.
Yes.
And continual prioritization?
No.
So,
No.
no, it benefits of prioritization, it's the answer. There's no, wait, I'm sorry. Never mind. No, wait, what?
Okay. So
Scratch
you want me to test D as in dog?
No, C is
No?
in Charlie.
C as in Charlie.
Yes.
So tell me why you like Charlie better, Tosin.
Because there are three, the consideration is basis, challenges, and continual prioritization. So
She's right,
C is
guys.
not, yeah.
This is correct, but
Continue.
this benefits falls underneath the basis of prioritization. It's like a sub of it. So whenever you talk about the considerations, it's basis, challenges, and continual prioritization. Good job, Tosin. You saved our bacon. You have been hired as a business analyst for an initiative. You discovered there are several requirements that are candidates for long-term use by the organization. As a new hire, which guidelines would provide information on how requirements will be managed and reused? So we're looking for a guideline in requirements management, because management reuse is in management, right?
Maintain.
Is it legal and regulatory information management approach, domain knowledge, or governance approach? Let's give it 10. Okay, what do you think of legal and regulatory information?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Information management approach?
Yes.
Maybe.
You like that one? Maybe?
Maybe.
Okay. Domain knowledge?
No.
No.
No? Okay. Governance approach?
No.
Maybe.
Maybe?
Maybe. It's either B or D.
So I see B or D. Can anybody argue for either one of them?
Governance isn't decision making, approvals.
Yeah.
It's mostly for governance.
Right.
And how requirement managed and reused is under the information management. This
Right,
is
because
my
it's going to
opinion.
say how it's stored and reused later.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
test B. This is the only guideline and tool in the BABOK list for the maintain requirements task. Good reasoning. There are several types of relationships that the business analyst considers when defining the traceability approach. So the traceability approach is in trace requirements. I'm sorry, that's not right. Yes, trace requirements.
Yeah.
What type of relationship exists? So one of the relationships when it only makes sense to implement a particular requirement if a related requirement is also implemented. Is that derive, depends, effort, or necessity? Let's give it 10. Okay, what do you think of derive?
No.
Maybe.
No, it can be eliminated.
No.
Did we have this question before?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Is it at D?
Yeah,
Well,
it's D.
they move around.
Okay.
Necessity is the answer, or was it D
I
before?
think it depends.
Because I'm thinking
Depends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Necessity
depends.
was the end for
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
We had
so
it before.
necessity is this is the subtype of the depends relationship that exactly describes the situation in the scenario and the trace requirements task. Depends is a relationship between two requirements used when a requirement depends on another requirement. It is a close answer, but necessity is the subtype that's more specific to this scenario. So I'm going to go back through this later and find out, did we have this exact one? Because that's a problem. Let's submit our exam and view results. Guys, 80%. Is this the first day we've done chapter 5?
Yeah.
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 And look how well you're doing. So I heard a lot of conversation that we kind of had to work our way into the right answer. It wasn't just a slam dunk, right? I'd like to stay on chapter 5 for one more week.
Okay.
Yep.
And let's get better at it. Let's polish this up. And then the week after that, we're going to do chapters 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to ask you which knowledge area and which task is this. And so you kind of have to keep it polished. Don't let it get dull, okay?
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
They
Okay.
beat on section 5-4 a lot.
Yeah, they do.
This again will be good.
Yes. So we're going to do chapter 5 again next week. And I want to thank you all for joining me and on this journey. It's fun for me to look at stuff. It's like I learned that before, but I'm learning it in a different way because I'm teaching it. I'm learning it a different way because I have new experiences. I'm sure you're going to have the same thing as you continue in your BA journey. If there's anything I could do for any of y'all. Oh, I'm sorry, Candace, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question.
Sure.
On the last question we had, the depends versus necessity. You don't necessarily have to go back to it. Just, do you have an example of depends? Just 'cause I think I'm probably going to trip up on when it's one or the other.
Let's see if I can actually go back to it. It never lets me do it. I keep thinking, oh, this is going to be great. Exam history, go into this one, and then I've got to do this. And slow down before I get past it. So, can somebody give an example of depends?
When there's a dependency, in order for this requirement to be implemented, I must have another requirement implemented.
So the example I gave the first time we went through this, somehow I think we really did have the same question twice. So here's the example. If I say you must have the format of the phone number be 10 digits and it's got to have the brackets and it's got to have the hyphen, space 1 is the bracket, 3 digits for the area code, space 2, 3 digits, hyphen, space, and then the 4 digits. That's the United States version. But, if you say that has to be the format, that only works if you have a field that says enter phone number. If you don't have that field, you don't need the other requirement that says for the format for that.
Well, look, what's an example of depends that isn't necessity? Because I think the example's given to be necessity, right? Which says is a subtype, but is there a different kind of depends?
There's another kind of yeah, depends. What is effort the other one? I can't remember out of the BABOK. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Depends has a subtype called necessity. Let me see if I can find it real quick. We are
necessity and
traceability.
effort.
Oh, okay, cool.
So here's where we are. So in relationships, you've got derive, you've got depend, which includes necessity, effort, and then you have satisfy and validate. I'm going to not try to tell you what they are. I'm going to tell you to go back to the BABOK to 5.1.4.2, and it will have the explanations of each one.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so chapter 5 again next week. And then the following week we'll do chapters 3, 4, and 5 and keep you polished on all this. If you are having Slack issues, Cassie's going to reach out to you, but go ahead and drop it in the chat that you're having Slack issues, or I can't tell you to put it on Slack that you're having Slack issues. If you need me, if you want to make time with me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm yours, okay? All right, guys. Oh, one more thing. Somebody said, please have your students submit if they feel strongly, if it's beneficial to them to be participating in this class. If y'all can send me a little paragraph that says this class was beneficial because, something. We want to use that with our ongoing IIBA advertisements for our future classes, and I don't want to wait till the very end because by then you are working on your test. So right now here in the middle, maybe if you have time, think about it. Send that to me on LinkedIn and give me permission to use it on our future stuff. If you don't want me to use your name, just say that part too, and I won't use your name. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Ujas.
Yeah, sorry, quick question. Do you think this is
Yes.
a good time to get watermark? Because I'm in Canada and I was just waiting to find something here. I haven't been able to, but would it be the correct time?
Are you talking about getting the book?
Yeah.
I think that you need the book for chapters 6, 7, and 8. So if you don't have it yet, I would suggest that you go after it. And as some of you know, they won't send the hard copy to anything outside the contiguous United States. So they'll send you a PDF. They charge the same amount of money for it. You almost do better just to, go on Amazon and buy it if you feel like it's important. Yes.
Just because I ordered it from Amazon. I'm in Canada since February till now. I didn't receive it.
You haven't received it?
No. Till now.
I never got it too since I'm in Florida. I think that was the one you were supposed to mail. I never got it
Okay,
either.
I did order
Same. I
yours.
didn't get it either.
Okay, guys, jump on LinkedIn and tell me who didn't get it, and I will go after the man. I can't go after him hard because he's helping us kind of, but I will go after him and say they're not getting it. Check your routing and your shipping and your tracking, and we'll be sure you get it. Okay, but send it to me on LinkedIn because I have too much in my head, and I found that I don't keep stuff if I don't get it in writing.
Yeah, for the ones that we are in Canada, if we don't get that book, is it okay? Like, will it make any difference?
No,
It's okay.
In fact, I was just thinking about this. What we can do, especially for you guys in Canada, is I will read to you during this meeting the things that I feel like are really beneficial. And I'm going to ask everybody else in the meeting to say, I needed this paragraph. There is a place in chapter 7 that I've said this to you before. I'm going to say it again. I was reading it. I read it 3 times, that one task. And it's like, I don't know what you're telling me. Am I dumb? And so I opened Watermark up and went, oh, it's telling me a concept. I thought it was telling me process. But once I realized it was concept, it's like, oh, okay, I understand the concept. I just needed that. So We'll call those out to you as we get into chapters 6, 7, and 8. This is what we found beneficial, and I'll just do that for you. You don't have to have the whole book. You just need to know these things that, move the needle for us, okay?
Okay,
So
thank you.
as the rest of y'all, if you look in your watermark book and you find good, send it to me on LinkedIn and I'll just compile a list and we can kind of share it, okay? I'm not asking you to quote Watermark, just this is what Watermark said that helped me understand the Babok. Okay? All right, guys.
Thank you,
you
Tia.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye.
week. Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.